Good morning, everyone. Thank you. I apologize for the laryngitis I have, and I'm hoping I will get through this without my voice giving out. If I do, I'll be very efficient on time. So the name of my introductory talk here is Tobacco Remains the #1 Behavioral Cause of Death, Time for an End Game. And okay, so I want to talk just basically from a global perspective and start by making one very basic point, having spent much of my career in the area of tobacco policy. You can think of the tobacco pandemic as an assembly line of adolescents entering one end, becoming addicted, and doing one of two things: succeeding in quitting or not succeeding in quitting. For the ones who do not succeed in quitting, which on a global scale is about 50%, half of them will die prematurely, generally losing 15 to 20 years of life. So it's fair to say that it is almost impossible. In fact, it is impossible to eradicate the tobacco epidemic and all of the medical sequelae associated with it without directly confronting that reality. And how can you confront it confront it as a society? One is price. The higher the price moves, as pointed out by this slide, and you'll see that the higher the tax, those particular countries have relatively lower consumption. The most price-sensitive groups are children and young adults, and so that's a big advantage, as well as those who are low income, a group that is especially targeted by the tobacco industry. Marketing bans are another way, and I will say that there are many countries in the world far more advanced than the United States with respect to these types of initiatives. There are many that are involved: radio and TV, billboards, point of sale, and indirect kinds of presence like product placement, which is absolutely huge. I will just note that almost all the time that you see smoking in a movie or a TV show, someone paid for it, whether you see a brand or not. There's money exchanging hands. Well, technically that's illegal in the United States. I think it happens there, and it certainly happens outside the United States. Without the deglamorization of smoking, smoking will continue, and we will continue the assembly line of death I described at the beginning. Where are these deaths? Well, 80% are occurring in high, middle, and low middle income countries now. So this pandemic has moved away from the highest income countries toward the high middle and low middle countries. Smoking is rising among youth in Southeast Asia. It's also rising among youth in the Eastern Mediterranean. And these are fairly recent data, but they have not changed appreciably. So we have a major problem. We have a session on Saturday about how to address that problem. And obviously a youth-oriented movement against tobacco is one way to do so. Teen smoking by region, you can see here the darker the color. And if you look at Southeast Asia, you see how dark the color is. Approximately 32.5% of 13 to 15-year-olds reporting that they smoke. So again, the assembly line, 32%, half successfully quit during their life cycle and lower their risk of death. The other half, let's say in this case, 16%, don't quit. And of those, half die, 8%. Percent changes in non-communicable disease deaths. The impact of this tobacco pandemic, which has spanned the entire last century and the century we are now in, is on average, a 44.1 at the high end increase in non-communicable disease deaths, almost all of which are tobacco attributable. Just a reminder that in the last century, 100 million people died of tobacco. In this century, 1 billion people will die of tobacco. 8.7 million people die every year in the world due to tobacco. So what is the answer? One of the answers is the emerging human right for a tobacco-free world. And it has been led by many countries and certainly led by the Framework Convention for Tobacco Control. Time does not allow me to elaborate on that, and I won't, but I will read this. Health is a fundamental human right indispensable for the exercise of other human rights. Every human being is entitled to the enjoyment of the highest attainable standard of health conducive to living a life in dignity. The Danish Institute for Human Rights has been in the absolute forefront of this movement. Tobacco is deeply harmful to human health, and there can be no doubt that the production and marketing of tobacco is irreconcilable with the human right to health. For the tobacco industry, the UNGP guiding principles therefore require the cessation of the production and marketing of tobacco. This is a radical statement. When I first was the president of the National Foundation called Legacy to combat tobacco use in the United States, I was their founding president. The oncologists had decided to hold a major stand-in in front of the White House, at which they were going to declare that tobacco should be made illegal in the United States of America. And multiple public health organizations scurried to try to stop them from doing so, because they felt it would be so politically naive and so politically deaf to the power of the tobacco industry that it would be a laughable exercise in the year 2000. Move forward 25 years from then till now, and that is really no longer the case. There is a global recognition that tobacco is the only consumer product in the world that we have allowed to be on the market that kills 50% of those who use it, that it's absurd on its face, and that the disease, suffering, and death associated really must stop, and it must stop as a result of policy. So the Global Forum for Human Rights and a Tobacco-Free World, part of the United Nations, has been working to take the Ruggie, that's John Ruggie, who no longer is with us, but who was a Kennedy School policy professor at Harvard. He had principles on business and human rights. There's the obligation to protect, respect, and remedy. And this is the framework that is being used on a global scale to combat tobacco-related death. And finally, remedy. The duty bearer, that is the government, must provide access to victims to effective remedy, both judicial and non-judicial. And I've been involved in many discussions working on the types of legal remedies that can be brought to bear, including meetings with the Attorney General of the state of New York about potentially bringing homicide charges against this industry. And there are a handful of countries in which this is theoretically possible. And at one time it will happen. And when it happens, it will be, I think, a sea change. Health equity is paramount. Governments have a duty as well as a right to stop the tobacco industry. The tobacco industry is the perpetrator of the epidemic. People who use tobacco are clients, not opponents. Cessation support is vital, as is lung cancer screening. Thank you very much.